Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, episode 994, California Dreaming, as we count down to 1,000. Of course, we didn't do episode last week, so we should be at our 1,000th episode on April 8th. Not April Fool's Day, but April 8th, which is not that long, which is, seemingly right around the corner. A lot to discuss on this. Lot to discuss. The NBA has taken the sports world attention from that stand front center. Uh, so now second half of the season, All-Star game in the books. Before we even get to that, like, subscribe, or share this podcast. Your support is definitely appreciated. But the NBA is front and center right now. I didn't do a podcast last week. Listen, the All Star Game is the All Star Game. It's been shit for basically a decade. So I thought I knew and thought that format was going to be trash. Um, dunk contest, 3-point contest. It is an absolute shit show. Um, just putting aside the dunk contest and 3-point shooting contest, put aside All Star Saturday night. In terms of the game, that format that they had will be a one and done format. Period, point blank. That'll be a one and done format. And we'll see if you get a USA versus the world. But I'll talk more about that later on in the program, the podcast with real thoughts. Right now, I want to just discuss two legendary franchises, the two greatest franchises in this sports history, Celtics and Lakers. And trust me, it kills me. I have to say the Celtics first as a Laker fan. But these two teams right now are playing some of the best basketball in the league. Um, both teams are 12-3 in their last 15 games. Boston has completely just not only beaten teams, but annihilated some teams. Uh, you know, destroyed the Knicks. They absolutely owned the Knicks. Had their way with Cleveland. They are back to where they were when they won a championship. It's just a matter of them staying healthy. Tatum won't be MVP, but he'll definitely be a top four candidate. And this is despite the fact that they're not. Jalen Brown really hasn't had a great year. I know he's put up some stats and numbers, but he hasn't played as well as he played last year, which led him to being conference finals and NBA finals MVP. But again, Boston's so deep and talented, and Missoula, knows how to push the right buttons. He's got the pulse of the team. And again, when they were struggling in January, I didn't, losing games. Losing games that was, you shake your head. I didn't take anything of it. Didn't think anything of it. Defending champion, played a number of big time playoff games over the last 6 or 7 years. The dead point of the season, January. Let me see them in March, and they haven't even wait. They didn't even wait till March to start playing. They're playing great right now. They again have the number 4 offensive rating and the number 2 defensive rating. And again, you're beating Boston. You better, you know, somewhat neutralize their 3-point shooting, and you have to destroy them in the paint. You got to take advantage because they don't have, a lot of you can. That's why I think a Denver matchup. I actually think Denver would probably be the toughest matchup for Boston in the league because Jokic is that great. I don't think Denver is probably the second best team in the league, but as far as the matchups, and we know playoffs are all about matchups. Joker would absolutely destroy Boston. I think that's probably would be their toughest matchup in the playoffs. But we'll see. That's way down the road. But Boston's back to where they were, and again, it's not a surprise at all whatsoever. What may be a surprise is how well the Lakers are playing. Um, as a Laker fan, they really have not. Lakers again 12-3 in the last 15 games. They have the number one defensive rating. I'll talk a little bit more about what they did to Denver on Saturday. But as a Laker fan, the team, frankly, has been not interesting for a good in a good way since they won the championship in the bubble in 2020. To be honest with you, you go 2021. Anthony Davis gets hurt in the playoffs. They lose. They blow a 2-1 lead against Phoenix. That Phoenix team, of course, goes to the NBA Finals and loses to Milwaukee. Then you trade for Russell Westbrook, and that was really the beginning of the end. Before they had got this Luka heist from Dallas, or got gifted Luka Doncic, where they get rid of Westbrook, they trade for Westbrook when it was clearly a horrible fit. Everybody knew it, except LeBron and Anthony Davis and Rob Pelinka. And you lose Caruso, you lose KCP, you lose Kyle Kuzma, who played well in the playoffs that year in 2020. So lost all the defensive pieces, lost their shooting, which little that they had. They never were, even in 2020, they weren't a great shooting team. Everybody shot well in the bubble, including Anthony Davis, who couldn't miss a 15 to 20 footer. And they really have been, again, interesting for the wrong reasons. Like, interesting because of the clear Russell Westbrook wasn't a fit, and going Frank Vogel being scapegoated. Interesting in the wrong way. Again, Darvin Ham being scapegoated. Westbrook not willing to play, not willing to really accept the role that he's been more than willing to accept in his last two stops with Denver and the Clippers. And by the way, the Lakers have to take some heat for that too, because Westbrook has played, like, there was a point um, when he was with the Lakers where I thought he was. If you told me where his career was headed back in 2022, I would have told you that he probably won't be in the league if he keeps going the way he was going. He's playing that poorly. No, just sense of self-awareness as far as where he was at in his career. Gets to the Clippers, plays well there. Denver, he's played in Denver. He's found his niche in these last two spots, and really it's been a big piece, a big part of Denver, or a positive part. I shouldn't. Big part maybe too give them too much credit, but been a positive for the Nuggets as they stand, as they're currently third in the West, or even second in the West. Look at the standings right now. But again, the Lakers were interesting for the wrong reasons. You go last year with Bronny James, and coming even this year with all that was going on. And again, the team got off to a quick start, took advantage of a soft schedule, cooled off a bit. You see JJ Redick throwing temper tantrums on the bench. It's like, what are we kind of going? What are we doing here? They're not a team that can win the championship. Forget, let alone even get to the conference finals. They will be, they'll be a top 5 or 6 seed, and then probably a first round exit, and then Luka Doncic happens, and that has completely changed the outlook not only of the foreseeable future for the Lakers, but also for this season, because what you saw on Saturday was a taste of what could possibly be when you have a guy who is clearly a top 3 player in this league, um, paired along with a LeBron James who looks as motivated and as he has ever looked in the last 3 or 4 years, since the bubble championship. And if you're watching LeBron these last couple of weeks, even before they traded for Luka, or right at it kind of coincided when they traded for Luka around that time, and LeBron's been simply spectacular. And again, you get LeBron James as your second best player with all the playoff minutes, numbers, with all the playoff experience that he has. It could be scary for the the Western Conference. It could be very scary for the Western Conference. You don't really want to see that team in the Western Conference with those two in the playoff series, trying to beat those two. That's 4 out of 7. Um, and give JJ Redick a lot of credit. I've never been the biggest JJ Redick fan. I don't think he should have been hired. he had and why do I think that? Well, he had no prior head coaching experience at any level. So I was like, I had to believe to see it. Um, Now he has weathered the storm, some of the early storms in the season. Austin Reeves is playing great. Um, Anthony Davis got off to a hot start, but kind of cooled down, but was playing relatively well before he got hurt. And I'm talking before he got hurt with the Lakers, not with the Mavericks. But before he got traded to the Lakers, he was playing relatively well. Before he got hurt with the Lakers, then of course he gets hurt again with Dallas. Now he's on the mend for a few weeks. So give Redick credit for keeping like I'm looking at how well Austin Reeves is playing, how well Hachimura is playing. They got Vincent in the mix. Um, so I got it is what it is. You got to give a man credit from that standpoint. Again, the playoffs will tell the tale as far as adjustments, seeing the same team, no back to backs, zero in a team when a team can zero in on you and your tendencies and things of that nature. So getting to the Denver game on Saturday, very important game for the Lakers from a standpoint of Denver had completely owned them basically the last 3 years, eliminating them playoffs back to back years, even swept them a couple years ago, took them out in 5 games last year. And offensively, Denver had been able to do whatever they wanted to against the Lakers, against the Lakers defense, even with Anthony Davis on the floor. And basically, Joker had, just been by far and away the best player on the floor, on the floor with LeBron James and Anthony Davis. So Saturday, Redick probably coached the best game of his career. I thought he somewhat confused and frustrated Joker. Joker had one of the worst games of his not of his career, but of the season by far. Joker, I mean, Joker doesn't put up. He doesn't have games of 12, 13, and 11. Only gets 7 shots. Had 6 turnovers. Has many turnovers as he did shots. I know he went to the line 10 times, but he was off kilter from start to finish for the entire game. And what they did is basically dared other guys to shoot. Denver was 16 of 30 of 41 from the 3-point line, but guess what? So were the Lakers. So that didn't that wasn't an advantage. Both teams were, both teams scored 48 points from behind the arc. Lakers just pounded them in the paint, outscoring Denver 52-30, and they again dared them to take 3-point shots. What Russell Westbrook took 17 shots in that game. He took the most shots out of anybody on the floor in that game. Think about that. He took the most shots out of anybody on Denver's team in that game. Like Joker only took 7 shots. Jamal Murray took 13. Christian Brown took as many shots as Joker. Aaron Gordon took 15 shots. Think about this. Aaron Gordon and Russell Westbrook combined for 32 shots in that game. And again, Denver came into that game number 1 in the league in terms of points in the paint. They almost scored 60 points in the paint. Denver devastates you in the paint. They don't the 3-point. They'll shoot a couple threes here and there, but they're not a heavy 3-point shooting team. That's not how they operate. Like Joker picks you apart in the paint. They did an excellent job of keeping Joker out of the paint. They did their work early. in terms of really making it uncomfortable for him. He's initiating offense, like instead of inside the paint, initiating offense, basically 18 to 20 feet from the floor, from the basket. But that again, that is, you give JJ credit, but you almost can't give him, you almost, you try to give him credit, but then you have these, these idiots in podcasting and in on television basically, calling him a genius again. And this is really he solved Joker. There's a podcast I listen that I look at for basketball analysis, and they do a wonderful job of breaking down, you know, strategies in terms of how teams are defending offensively and defensively. It's called, thinking basketball. The tremendous job. Whoever runs it does a wonderful job. But even they got caught up in the Reddick hype, saying basically saying that did they solve Joker? Is this? And like we gotta you gotta calm down. They I can make a case that you might not even wanted to show because it's a gimmick defense. You're not going to be able to run that in the playoffs. It's just not because all Denver has to do is basically not have Westbrook on the floor for extended periods of time because he can't shoot and spread. Spread. Yeah, there are some adjustments that Denver could do to that can tear that defense up. Like that defense, that's not. We didn't see the blueprint on how to slow down Joker. Joker, first of all, he had an awful game. He threw the ball all over the place. Uh, part of that was some of the confusion. He looked somewhat confused, not confused, but again, agitated and, wasn't getting to his spots. This guy is a basketball savant. He will, in a 7-game series, you can't run the same shit anyway against a player of that magnitude. But it worked to perfection on Saturday night. Luka had his breakout game, 30 points. And everybody again, the Luka reaction the first couple games was like my goodness. I mean, he was only averaging his first 3 games, only averaging about 14 points a game, struggling, to find rhythm, struggling. He just had his whole life shaken or just changed up. He did not expect to be traded. This was not like that. He basically had his whole life turned upside down from a basketball standpoint. He was going to eventually get it together. Like that, I'm not a healthy Luka Doncic. I'm not concerned at all about how well him getting acclimated. And him and LeBron, these are two of the smartest basketball players that the game has ever seen, and currently maybe the two highest basketball IQs right now in the league. So they were going to figure it out. Now, can the Lakers keep this level of defense up? We'll see. We'll see. Denver came in as one of the best offensive teams in basketball. They held them to 100 points. Again, their defense, I mentioned this earlier, has been number one in the NBA, number one in terms of points per possession per 100 possessions, number one defensive rating for the last 15 games, and that is not a small sample size. Like 15 games is a nice sample size, basically for the better part of almost a month. And the question for the Lakers would be, to me, because they're going to score. Like the Lakers are going to score. Like you had Luka, LeBron, Austin Reeves has been great this year. They have plenty guys. Rui Hachimura can give you 20 on a given night. This game, particular game, they had 4 guys that had 20 points. Offense will not be a problem. Can this defense hold up in a 7-game series? And again, I still think pound for pound, Denver is their toughest matchup because Joker is so devastating. And again, he is absolutely, this could have been an aberration. He's absolutely owned the Lakers. So I still think Denver is a team that gives them probably their toughest matchup. I understand. We'll talk more about OKC later, but nobody else really in the Western Conference would scare you outside the obvious as far as Denver and OKC. Everybody else, like you're talking about Houston, no experience. Minnesota has been, hard to figure out. They've been inconsistent, lost a bunch of close games. I know when they had their game of the year had their best win of the year last night, and we'll talk more about that. But the West is not, Phoenix. I mean, Golden State could be interesting as well. They're not contenders, but Golden State could be interesting. They've been great since Jimmy Butler joined the team, and we knew this was going to happen. That Jimmy Butler would actually start trying once he got his way, which he did. Um, so, Golden State. I don't see Golden State as a team that can move the needle to win a title. Maybe they can get fortunate. Maybe they can win a round. Maybe, but they're not a title contender. So the West really comes down to me to Oklahoma City, Denver, and the Lakers on the in that solid third spot. I don't believe in Memphis at all. I don't like how John Moran has looked this year. I can make a case that Jaren Jackson Jr. has been their best player, and I can make a case that to be honest with you, right now, right? I mean, right now, with you know, in the next 5 years, who'd you rather have? Would you rather have Morant or Jaren Jackson Jr.? I really can make that like Memphis is going to have a very interesting summer to say the least because you're going to pay Jaren Jackson Jr. and you're going to have to make a decision on what your long term future is in terms of John Morant. I have not again. John Morant's numbers have been fine. I don't think he's been the same. He has not been the same player since all that shit went down with the guns in the club and everything coming back off the injury from last year. He just doesn't look. Just something is missing right now. I don't see the same intensity. I don't see, even though he's still a great athlete. I don't. I think he's lost a little bit of athleticism. So he's definitely not. He's not close to the guy he was when they made the conference finals in 2020 and 2022. Is not anywhere close to that guy. So again, I don't trust Memphis. They are. I don't like them in terms of execution. I don't like them in that. I don't like their half court game. They're great. They're not team not getting. They don't need the 3-point shot, so they have that going for them. They like points in the paint, just like Denver. So they can have a game where, and again, they listen. They've been at both. They've been top 10 in defensive and offensive rating, but it's something about that team that just doesn't vibe with me in terms of when I watch them. To be perfectly honest with you, so to me, I look at the Western Conference. You got Oklahoma City, Denver, and again, the Lakers will. I would say the Lakers will be in that third spot. Again, I don't think the Lakers. I don't think the Lakers will win a championship this year. Could they get to the conference finals? Yes, possibly. But I think next year is the year that they can take a serious run. Luka full off season. Um, they can add some pieces. They still have some draft capital, especially when the Mark Williams trade was rescinded by them, and they were able to keep that 31st pick and Dart Connect. So you can move some pieces in off season. I mean, Austin. I mean, they can move Austin Reeves. He's only adding value to his to himself as an asset. So Lakers and Celtics are rolling. Again, I didn't pick either one of these teams to get the conference to get to the NBA Finals. I didn't pick the Celtics, and that is a pick that picking the Knicks is one that's not aging well right now. The Knicks just have no chance against the Celtics. Have zero chance against the Celtics. I know the Knicks probably are built for the postseason, but we've seen them enough against the top three teams, and they have been, these games haven't even been close, going 0-7 and getting blown out seemingly in every single game. A couple of things about the NBA. Again, we've heard some of the same complaints in regards to. It's obviously easy to complain. What's up with All Star Weekend? The NBA took obviously a huge blow with losing Wembanyama for the season with the blood clots in his shoulder, and that's even way more concerning than this All Star format, the All Star Weekend, especially the All Star game on Sunday. The Wembanyama was a big blow, but It's not a knee, it's not a back, it's not a feet. So it's nothing structural. So you're hoping that that is something it is treatable. We've seen it with Brandon Ingram. It now again did end Chris Bosh's career. So that's where you sticks in the back of your mind from that standpoint. But modern medicine, that was like 10 years ago as well. So modern medicine, the guy that's only 21, again, the most valuable commodity in the NBA right now from the standpoint of this a guy that you would not there's not a player that you probably wouldn't trade him for in the league, like on a rookie contract, and he was headed towards defensive player of the year, headed towards at worst a second team all NBA. There were people that I looked at were talking about him as a possibility first team all NBA. I don't think he would have made first team, but he's definitely making second, without question making third, maybe even second team all NBA. So that was a big blow. But you look at the things that are right with the NBA as we move forward. You have three major markets who are top four seeds in their respective conferences in Boston, New York, and LA. You have some not mid major, but you have some small market powerhouses in OKC and Cleveland who are, who could, you know, who could possibly win 70 games. You have star power now with Luka in LA. Um, Getting Jimmy Butler going to Golden State makes them somewhat more interesting than what they were, say, 2 weeks ago. Um, you know, Cleveland being one of the best. Cleveland is one of the best stories. Cleveland is the best story in the league this year. It's not even close. Are they legit title contenders? That's the question. Can they win a championship? And I don't know. I don't know if Cleveland can win a championship. I know that playoff basketball versus regular season basketball is completely different. Don't be fooled by teams dominating in the regular season. Playoffs are absolutely another beast. They really are. They really really don't. I mean, you can respect the regular season. You can develop habits over the regular season that can carry into the playoffs. Like I'll put it to you this way: you are not going if you're not playing well in the regular season, right? In recent memory, and especially in like the last since the bubble, you don't see teams who are struggling in the regular season all of a sudden turn on the playoffs. That hasn't happened. That hasn't happened. Like like that just is just your habits over the course of a regular season. You are a product of your habits. If you had bad habits in the regular season, they're gonna get exposed even that much more in the playoffs. But you will see teams overachieve in the regular season and then, fall on their faces and wet the bed in the playoffs. I have seen that. I've seen see that happen a few times. Okay, so the regular season doesn't guarantee anything. I can look at the regular season. I can respect it from a standpoint. I respect Cleveland. I picked Oklahoma City to win the championship, so I certainly respect it and love how they play. But don't think that I heard somebody say that Austin and Cleveland are basically neck and neck from that standpoint of they're right there with Boston. They're not. They're not right there with Boston. Like they're the Cleveland had that team hasn't won anything. Like you're comparing them to a team that not only is coming off a championship, but a team that's played since 2018. The Celtics have played in nothing but big time playoff games, conference finals, NBA finals. Uh, they've only lost in the first round one time in that time span, and that was in 21 to the Nets when those guys were healthy. Kyrie, Harden, and Durant. That seems like a long time ago. It really does. It seems like a long time ago. But outside that, they've won at least one playoff round, and they've been in a number of conference finals games. Conference finals games. That's why what makes Oklahoma City interesting in watching their journey, seeing how they progress. as we go through this regular season into the playoffs. But don't go all in terms of thinking that the regular season, the playoffs are going to look like the regular season. The chances are they won't. So the college football playoff committee had their meeting today in Dallas, and what they're going to decide what the college football playoffs will look like next year. The SEC and the Big Ten have both proposed that they have play-ins for their own conference championships. Like, so meaning that those two teams would the top two teams would get automatic bids, and then they would have two other teams do a play-in in both the Big Ten and SEC championships, meaning that overall each one of those teams will get four bids. So Big Ten four bids, SEC four bids. The ACC and Big 12 would get two apiece. They would have one, basically, and this shows you how still powerful a brand and powerful of University of Notre Dame is. They have one bid for Notre Dame if Notre Dame was ranked in the top 14, and then three at large bids. And right now, those two conferences, the SEC and the Big Ten, are absolutely running college football. Those are the two big jokers. They are dictating this, and I would be so shocked if this doesn't pass right away, because that's how powerful both these conferences are. And in 2026, both these conferences will be able to not to start their own fall playoff, but to basically do their own thing. Do their in that step out from won't be a part of the uh you know the contract is still in 2025, so they basically almost in a sense will be somewhat free agents in 2026, but in 2026 their power will increase. So it's if you're the rest of college football, it's either kind of like pay now or pay later. You might as well fall in line with what these conferences are doing. These are the two conferences that are by far and away the most important conferences, and most valuable conferences in all college football. The SEC, either a SEC or a Big Ten team, has won a championship, college football championship, since going back to 2019. The last non-Big Ten or non-SEC team to win a championship was Clemson in 2018. Again, you get a lot of complaints. Well, what if you get an 8-4 team, take a bid? Well, that's what it is. That's these two again. That's what it will be. It's just that simple. I mean, these two teams. Let me tell you something. You don't ask for what they ask. To ask for to ask for four bids out of the possible. They're asking for four bids out of the possible, say, 14 playoff teams. Four. And 8 between the two of them. So more than half of the bids. And if we were to expand it to 16, it would be half of the bids. And if you expand it to 16, you'll have 3. You'll get there 4, and you'll have 3 apiece going to the ACC and Big 12. And if you think about it, if you watch college football last year, you're a huge college football fan. The most important games in college football last year, I don't think there was a big time game that didn't involve at least one Big Ten team or at least one SEC team. Any game that was of any significance, that had any major playoff implications. The biggest games last year involved both those two conferences, or one of those two conferences in a given game. So they flex that power. They're going to continue to flex that power. And again, they're taking a vote today. I'll be surprised when we do a podcast next week that we're not talking about the SEC and Big Ten getting 4 playoff teams for the 2025 college football playoff. I'll really be shocked if that doesn't happen. Who won the week? Diana Taurasi. She retired uh, over 20 years, legendary career, considered university regarded as the greatest women's basketball player of all time. Um, you know, we could do a podcast on the accolades, but just a couple things that stood out. Obviously, three-time WNBA championship. She has the MVP. 139 and 8 at Connecticut. Freshman year, they lost in the Final Four. She said, "We will never lose another tournament game," and they did. They won three straight national championship games, including that 2002 team, which is regarded by many to be the greatest women's team of all time. They went undefeated. I don't know. They would beat, Cheryl Miller and Cynthia Cooper, which I'll get to back who played, of course, at USC. So that would be, a classic battle. But that 2002 UConn team is University is regarded as definitely the best team in the last of this century, without for sure. Like that is not even a question. And she stands, Tarasi stands head and shoulders above her Connecticut, alumni, and again, Connecticut, the greatest women's program of all time with the 11 national championships. Um, she's universally regarded as the GOAT, but I really don't believe that Cynthia Cooper, who I just mentioned, gets anywhere near enough consideration, considering the fact that she won Cynthia Cooper, who played for the Houston excuse me, from 96, 97 to 03. And we only played 4 years. The last year, she plays 4 years, then she does 2 years to coach, then she comes back and seemingly a ceremonial year where she only played 4 games. So really, she played four. She joins the WNBA at the age of 34. Championship, four championships, four finals MVPs. That's a pretty strong case to be the GOAT. And again, it's unfortunate because Cheryl Miller, there was no WNBA for the likes of Cheryl Miller, or this could be possibly a different conversation. Everybody, you know, talked about how dominant and how great she was, but unfortunately, again, the league didn't exist. I think Tarasi, I'll be honest with you, as competitive as she is, she had that, she was obviously a huge Kobe Bryant fan, the Mamba mentality. She was a killer on the court. She absolutely was. But I'm telling you right now, don't think that her retiring, don't think that Caitlin Clark didn't have anything to do with her retirement. I'm sure as Caitlin Clark, as we got back from the Olympic break, when the Olympic break was over, Olympics are over, Caitlin Clark takes off, they get to the playoffs. I'm sure Diana Taurasi did not want to spend another year. You have no Olympics. There's going to be more games getting cooked by Caitlin Clark. Trust me, when you get to this level, these athletes have a lot of pride. I'm telling you right, they have a lot of pride. She makes the comments about Caitlin Clark. Yeah, nothing was wrong with the comment. Nothing was wrong with her comments. She basically said that this is not college basketball. The competition is much higher, and she's not going to dominate. The, she's not going to dominate what you saw in Iowa that last year. You're not going to see it early on in her first year uh, at the WNBA level. These players are much better, and she was right. But Caitlin Clark started to figure things out, especially after that Olympic break. Um, and she looked again. Tarasi is just not going to hang around uh, and be getting dominated. She's not going to hang around when it becomes Caitlin Clark's league, and it's going to eventually. Asia Wilson is the best player right now. You have some wonderful players across the league, top players across the league, but it's going to be eventually Caitlin Clark's league. As far as like she will be the best player in 2 to 3 years. 3 years after, like it's just she just has all the skills. So since from my offensive standpoint, and she really took a major jump in the second half of the season post. After they got back from after the Olympics were over. And remind you, the schedule will be spread out, and it will be she'll have again that second year be used to the grind. And yeah, if it's Rossi, Larry Bird said something that about the Dream Team. There's a new doc on We Beat the Dream Team on HBO. Very good, by the way. And Chris Webber, he talked about that practice where they had the games back to back. Of course, the Dream Team, the U.S. Select Team, won the first game and got destroyed the second day. But they talked about that first game when Webber was dominating, and they were saying he was just like a man child, and Larry Bird was like, if this dude is coming in the league, I need to get out. So again, and again, this was Larry Bird during it was when his back was jacked up, and it was his time. I mean, that was it. That was 91, 92 was his last season, so he didn't even play beyond that Dream Team back in '92 in Barcelona. But no, again, Tarasi, if there was no if Caitlin Clark didn't come into the league, I could see Tarasi playing another year or so. But she's not going to allow her pride, ego is not going to allow her to be dominated by Caitlin Clark. And this year was different. She wins the gold medal. The season kind of was kind of choppy from a standpoint of scheduling. The next year there would have been nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Like next year, it would have been all eyes would have been WNBA, no Olympics, nothing like that. No, no, I'm good. I'm good. Let this young it's a young woman's sport. I had my time, got my championships. I dominate overseas. I'll go down as a GOAT, and that's it. Some real thoughts before I let you go. So we had last week the well, first of all, let's hold on. Even before I get to that, uh, I gotta get to this game last night before I get the real thoughts. Game of the week. Game of the week. Okay, OKC, Minnesota. Now, OKC destroyed Minnesota on Sunday in Minnesota. It was a straight ass whooping. So no surprise. I mean, they're a better team. Minnesota's been choppy all over the place, inconsistent all year long. Actually, they had played better without Julius Randle, but they're missing some pieces now. Randle, no DiVincenzo, no Rudy Gobert. So Minnesota's missing some pieces. And I'll be honest with you, outside DiVincenzo, they might be better without Gobert, or especially definitely better without Julius Randle. So we get to last night, and it's looking similar to Sunday. Like Oklahoma City is at home. They absolutely dominating this game. Yeah, by as many as 25 points. And then the fourth quarter and overtime happens. They outscore OKC between the fourth quarter and overtime. They outscored them 51-26 and end up winning the game. Anthony Edwards. Now, if I would have told you, if you hadn't watched the game and I told you if you hadn't seen the game or the box score, you'd say, well, what happened? The Anthony Edwards scored 50? No, he actually had a relatively pedestrian game. He was only Edwards had in this game 17. As I look at the box score, Edwards in this game 5 and 15, 1 for 6 from 3-point line, 17, 13, and 8. Now he had again 13 rebounds and 8 assists, and it had one big time block. Either I want to say, yeah, it was in overtime. Man, now keep in mind, Edwards in this game was not good, and they were getting beat so bad. Finch took out the starter, basically took out took out his starters, and they had bench players in. Like you got guys like it was basically Nas Reed, Alexander Walker, Rob Dillingham, guys like those guys. Like they basically had the second unit in a couple of guys from the second unit in. No Anthony Edwards. Like no Edwards left the game with 7:11 left. Would not come back until 132 left in overtime. So he misses the last 7 minutes of the game and basically the first 4 minutes or 3.5 minutes of overtime. So he goes basically in game time 10 minutes without playing. They were only nine, well, you'll say, well, they must have shot a bunch of threes. No, 9 of 32 from the 3 point line. And again, they did make up for it. Oklahoma City had a bunch of turnovers, and Minnesota did go to the line 39 times and shot 34 free throws. Here's what I'm concerned about Oklahoma City. Now, you gotta keep this in mind. No Chet Holmgren. Okay. I I still think pound for pound, Chet Holmgren, despite the fact that Jalen Williams um, made the All Star team this year, I still think Chet, in terms of impact on a game, what he could do defensively, and what needs to happen in regards to Chet Holmgren, I still think Chet Holmgren is their second best player. But what I saw in that fourth quarter was a team that was too shade SGA dependent. The SGA was spectacular again, 39 points. Did his usual, well, really struggled in the fourth quarter. They didn't even get a lot of shots in the fourth quarter, to be honest with you. But, they jacked up a bunch of threes. Um, they were only, again, they were, 49 3 point shots, 15 to 49 from the 3 point line. That's only 15 to 49, 30%. So 49 3 point shots they jack up. So they took 106 shots, 49 threes, basically almost half their shots were 3 point shots. So you had, some bad offense, a bunch of turnovers. Um, Actually not that many turnovers. They actually only had they had 11 turnovers, but they had some bad turnovers at inopportune times. Um, Again, it's a type of loss that was that just stood out because again, Minnesota has been extremely inconsistent this year. Um, you're up 25, you're up like 17 with 3:45 left. Anthony Edwards is having a relatively pedestrian game for him. They don't make a bunch of threes, and you lose the game on your home floor. And it just was a reminder to me of, again, I picked Oklahoma City to win the championship, definitely get to the finals and win the championship. But it was a reminder of there's still some steps that this team has to take. And I'm looking at this team. I know SGA will be the MVP if he stays healthy. He's going to be the MVP this year. But I'm looking at this team, and again, who is the number two guy when you need to stop the bleeding? Like I don't anticipate them blowing leads like that. But who is the number one? Like who you need that second guy in the playoffs? You need that second guy. Like the championship teams, last 4 to 5 years, we've seen LeBron, AD, we've seen Giannis with a combination of Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, uh, Joker, Jamal Murray. Jamal Murray was spectacular 2 years ago in 20, of course, in 23, again, especially in the playoffs. He destroyed the Lakers, but was spectacular all around the playoffs. And last year, of course, Brown and Tatum. So you need that second guy. And again, Jalen Williams, last night he puts up numbers. Um, you know, 27 points, 6 rebounds, uh, what, 6 rebounds and 6 assists. It was fine. I mean, he played relatively good game, but they were not impactful. And when the time, there was a time in that fourth quarter where you got to have, can't just be riding the SGA bandwagon, not bandwagon, but you can't just be, teams can zero in on SGA. You got to have that second dude. And I don't see a distinct second guy right now for Oklahoma City. And they will not win a championship. Again, before the season, I say if they're going to win a championship, Chet Holmgren has to be their second best player. Now, he's had some injuries. He's gotten back, and actually he's played well since he got back. But come playoff time, Holmgren is going to have to be great for them to get out the West, let alone win a championship. So that was a very, very eye-opening loss. I normally don't get too wrapped up in regular season games, especially in February, but that one kind of that one stood out more than most. Real thoughts. So last week, last Thursday, I watched the NHL game for the first time since the Stanley Cup Finals back in last June. When you had Florida almost blow a 3-0 lead in the Stanley Cup against Edmonton. Connor McDavid, of course, gets the Conn Smythe on a losing team. Fast forward now to this Four Nations All-Star format that the NHL has going, where you had Canada facing the USA. Phenomenal rivalry. One time they played, there's like 3 fights in the first 3 minutes. They played last Thursday. They played absolute classic. Connor McDavid scores a game-winning goal in overtime in Boston for the Canada to win 3-2. And there was, this is coming off, of course, a shit show of an All-Star weekend for the NBA. So, of course, you had the natural comparisons between what the NHL was doing versus the NBA. And again, I'll be honest with you, the ratings in the NHL were great. Highest rated game, it was the largest NHL broadcast. It was the largest NHL US broadcast ever. But you can't compare uh, the All Star form. You can't compare the All Star games from the NHL to the NBA. It is why, and you can't like the NHL. Those guys. First of all, the money is not even anywhere close to the NBA. Average NBA player makes roughly about $12 million a year, and the average NHL player 3.5 million. It's a big gap. It's a big gap. Like these guys, and just the Canada USA game is those countries hate each other when it comes to hockey. That is as fierce as a rivalry as you will see in sports. There are guys in on those teams that took that game as serious, or if not more serious, than they would take Game 7 of a Stanley Cup. That is the hatred. That's the level of competitiveness that game brought out. Again, it's a wonderful game to watch. Again, I'm not on hockey the way I used to be. When I grew up following, Mario Lemieux, watching Lemieux, and as a Pittsburgh Penguins fan, and of course, now in the last 10 to 15 years, the great Sidney Crosby, who of course was on Canada's team this year. So you can't compare that to the NBA. The NBA, the bottom line is not, is forget about the gimmicks. Forget about it's not about the gimmicks. The reason why the NHL worked is the players played hard and were motivated. It's just that simple. It's not about gimmicks. Do the players want to be at All Star Weekend? The players don't give a shit, then fans are not going to give a shit. And again, I don't know. Listen, you can have USA versus World, but if the players don't bring it or even try relatively or even somewhat try hard, then we're gonna be having the same conversation this time in 2026 in regards to the All-Star game. So I don't compare it like this. You can't do what the NHL does. It's an unfair comparison. You can have NHL guys call out NBA guys all you want. NBA guys could give not two shits, and give one shit about what PK Subban says about them. These guys making so much money. They don't care about what the NHL thinks about them. They really don't. But again, get the NHL credit for not for that format, but you gotta get the players credit for like really bringing it. But don't if you're the NBA, if you're somebody who roots for, if you're somebody who loves the NBA, don't compare it to the NHL as far as the format. There's nothing like the NBA, like that wouldn't matter. It doesn't matter if you have players that don't care about about that game. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. This podcast will be up later on this evening. And of course, you have Dallas getting it back to the NBA. Dallas visits the Lakers tonight. I'm predicting Luka gets, I'm going to say, give Luka 35. I don't see 45 and 50. Again, Luka get about 35, 10, and 5 tonight. And yeah, 35, 10, and 5 for Luka tonight. So that's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal podcast. I will see you next time. Have a great rest of your week. So long.